Welcome to The Den. We are a podcast from Cubs Den. You can find us on the Chicago Now website. And I'm your host, Myles Phelps. You can find me on Twitter at mphelps11 and make sure to follow at Cubs Den. With me as always, Jared Wyllys. You can follow him on Twitter at jwyllys. It's at JWYLLYS. He writes for Forbes, a bunch of other different places. So we're happy to have him on again. Jared, I haven't talked with you in quite a while. It feels like with the shortened season, our conversations are few and far between. How's everything going?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been one of those weird times because I feel like I turned around and the season was just about over. So I don't know how you feel, but it felt like it kind of snuck up on me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I feel like for a lot of baseball fans, it was like that. You turned on the TV and saw the Cubs, and now you turn it on, and we're in an off day, and the playoffs start tomorrow, which is just crazy. But
Yeah.
we're going to talk about just the season and just kind of wrap that up a little bit. I want to focus more on the playoffs because the Cubs did win the division. So we'll talk about what lies next for them with the Marlins. Cubs named their starting pitcher today for game one, which was kind of maybe a surprise for some people. And then Jared was on with a lot of the Cubs players today for their media session. So we might be able to get some tidbits from him on that. But let's start with the Cubs winning the NL Central. Were you surprised at all about how the Central came down to play and the Cubs, coming out on top?
I think if you'd asked me that before the first games were played, I would have said yes. Just in that, not surprised that they won the division so much, but a little surprised at how relatively easily they did it. But I think what really sealed it for me was when they started off 13-3. Um, and that, after those first like 2.5 weeks of the season, I kind of knew, barring some horrible slide, that they were in good shape. So and if you look back at what they did over those 60 games, it 2 really good weeks, and that's what does it for you. So no, not surprised that they won. But kind of thought that like St. Louis would be a little tougher this season, and it just didn't really shake out that way. But yeah, not surprised to see them where they're at right now.
So you mentioned that stretch that they were, kind of on fire. It almost felt like even though it was a shortened season, we were still waiting for the offense to catch up with what you and Kyle Hendricks and really the entire pitching staff was doing. So going back to the question of were you surprised? Were you surprised at how it happened versus the outcome?
Yeah, because that part was surprising for sure. Because I sort of figured that the bats would carry them this season. And in my mind, I was expecting like that bullpen to be a much bigger problem than it turned out to be. I mean, granted, there were some issues, but nothing at all like I thought the Cubs were going to have in store for them. So if you had told me that Chris Bryant wouldn't be hitting, Javi Baez wouldn't be hitting, and so on, I would have said, well, there's no way these guys win this division. So that part of it, absolutely. That you got like Cy Young caliber pitching from Yu Darvish, that the bullpen held up in large part because Jeremy Jeffress just stepped up. Those are things that I would not have guessed would be how it worked out.
Yeah, it just seems concerning a little bit going into the playoffs against and we're going to get to the Marlins in a minute, but a team that is relatively unknown, I think, for a lot of Cubs fans because we really didn't get to see them, match up a lot. But is this something that, as Cubs fans, we should be concerned about, or did you see any trends that might lead us to believe that maybe the bats are taking a turn for the better?
Well, there are definitely some encouraging signs because as a whole, if you've got, I mean, we've seen it before. If you've got an offense that really struggles to score, this is going to be a short-lived playoff run. We saw it in that wild card game 2 years ago, where what did they score? 1 run in that 14 inning insanity.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So we know if they go even in in 2016, think how close they came to not even making it to the World Series. They got shut out 2 games in a row in the NLCS against the Dodgers. So when the offense goes flat, that's trouble. So that's a legitimate concern going into this series. But I will say there were some encouraging signs because, particularly in that White Sox series, they scored a lot of runs and they got runs from guys that they hadn't really been getting them from before. I mean, Chris Bryant is the big one. A grand slam on Saturday, another home run on Sunday. That's stuff that like you want to see that because the hope is that okay, this is going to just keep going and help pick up the rest of this offense. So that was an encouraging sign for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's funny thinking about Chris Bryant and the seasons that he's had since being rookie of the year and MVP. It's just I want that guy back. I want
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that he can turn it around and that we can get the superstar that we were promised. But so I've been really negative so far on this podcast. Let's go to some of the positives. So Kyle Hendricks has had another phenomenal season. We continue to hear the comparisons to Greg Maddux, I think more and more, and now coming from other players that have faced him. He's getting the start in game one, which is on a normal year, you would say, okay, game one at Wrigley, that's a no-brainer for somebody that has just dominated at home. But on the other side, you have a guy in Yu Darvish that is on the short list to possibly win a Cy Young. So were you surprised at Ross's decision? I think he'd even mentioned that he feels like he's got 2 aces, and the
Yeah.
decision either way is not going to be a bad one, but still a tough call. I mean, what was your reaction after seeing that Kyle was going to get the start?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it was it feels a little bit like a coin flip because you're not really going to go wrong either way. But like they shared during some of the workout interviews that I just took part in. A lot of the decision did come down to just timing of who had gone the longest since pitching last, and part of the decision, the fact that Hendricks had gone longer was a factor. So in the order of the rotation, that's just kind of where they were at, and so Ross spoke to that fact a little bit, like he was partially thinking just it's kind of Kyle's turn anyway. But at the same time, like he said, he's got 2 aces there, so it's not like you're really going to go wrong. I actually kind of like the idea of Darvish in game two because you know if I'm going to pick a shutdown guy, that's my guy. Because game one, if the Cubs lose and you're already in an elimination position, um, having Darvish to be able to pitch game two puts you in a much better spot to then force the third game. And again, this is like I say, much better spot, not not by a lot. Um, but if give with that in mind, I kind of like Darvish in game two.
Are you at all concerned with? Because my first thought was like, yeah, you can't go wrong, but if the Cubs drop game one, you're putting Darvish, somebody that hasn't historically performed well in tough playoff type situation games. That it's a little bit of a concern to me. Do you think that was weighed at all? I mean, obviously there were some other things that were going into Darvish's struggles earlier, but I don't know. It's just if they would lose game one, I'm a little
Yeah.
bit more concerned than I maybe would have been.
Yeah, I think that's fair to at least kind of feel a little extra nervousness or anxiety going into that if they lose game one because of what's happened with Darvish in the postseason in the past. But I think from what I've seen, he seems mentally he seems like a different guy than he was a couple years ago. Because when he came in 2018, it's hard to believe this is his third season with the Cubs already. Um, But when he came in, just the level of confidence and comfort, it took a while for it to look like he really felt like this is where I belong. And that I think we saw it in the second half in 2019 where that started to kick in. And then the way he's pitched this year, I think, is largely in part due to he feels he feels that now. So I would take that and sort of weigh it against the postseason struggles of the past. because I think mentally he's a different guy than he was a few years ago. Um, so I honestly I thought about it a little bit, but that's not something that worries me too much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess typically if you have somebody that is going to win a Cy Young potentially, they're not going to be somebody that you're going to be concerned about hopefully going into the postseason. But we'll see.
Yeah,
Maybe no fans is a good thing for
right.
him. Maybe he's just better with nobody there. But I don't know. He's pitched big games before, so we'll see. Let's go on to the Marlins. Jared, if I said that the Cubs would be playing the Marlins in the first round of the MLB playoffs to start this year, what would you have said? Would you tell me I was crazy?
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, this is the team that we thought was going to bring the whole season to a halt back in the end of July. And
Right,
so and even when they did start playing again, and they kind of went on a hot streak, and everybody's talking about the Marlins, my attitude was like, oh come on, like give me one game they're throwing out a guy who had last pitched in like A ball. I was like, this
right.
is like bad news bears out there. It's a joke. But sure enough, like here they are. And I should caveat this by saying that this postseason is unusual because it's been opened up to a lot more teams, and so you have teams in there that under normal circumstances wouldn't be there. And I think the Marlins are one of those teams. Across a 162 game stretch, I don't think they hold up. But credit to them in this sprint of a season that they held on in a tough NL East, and earned their spot. So and they've got some big arms in that rotation. So it's not it's tempting to be dismissive of them in this series and say, "Oh, Cubs in two, no sweat." But their Marlins are legit in some ways. So um, who knows?
Yeah, I was looking at the roster and I was like, don't know him, never heard of him. Is that a real person? You just go down the list and it's
Right.
like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Aguilar, I remember him. He was in the home
Oh
run
yeah.
derby. He was a Brewer, but other than that, it's like, dude, I don't know who any of these people are. So like, what should we expect? Like, is it going to be one of these situations where the Cubs face one of these firearm no name guys off the mound and struggle, or are they going to light these dudes up?
Yeah. I forget who it was, but during the interviews today, somebody asked Schwarber about like ask a baseball fan anywhere in the country, and they can name most of the Cubs roster, but ask them to name a Marlins player, they can't. And he
Right.
Schwarber kind of laughed because he's like, yeah, that's and he compared it to he's like that's what I feel like we were like in 2015. Um, but yeah, I think though maybe the key to watch out for, and you've alluded to it, but we've seen where big power arm guys that the Cubs aren't real familiar with can really throw them for a loop. Again, to go back to what we talked about with the offense, where they can get real quiet sometimes. That might be the X factor right there for Miami is if the fact that in this unusual season, and this question came up a lot during the interviews, but you aren't facing a team that you've seen at all because this year's unusual because they stuck in the Central. You played the NL Central, played the AL Central, but then now you get to the postseason. Here's Miami. You haven't seen these guys ever, because even you can't really even compare this roster to Miami of last year. And so that's an unusual set of circumstances. Now it goes both ways because the Marlins also haven't faced the Cubs, but as in terms of like the offense preparing for the pitching, um, that's a wrinkle that if I had to put my thumb on like what might cause a problem for the Cubs, I think that's potentially it right there.
Yeah, that scares the shit out of me, to be honest with you. Like
They're
I
so
just
legit,
picture a
a legit
game
team,
where
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just picture a game where it's like 1-0 um, for like both games, and like they end up just dropping it because they couldn't figure out a pitcher before the sixth inning, and then all of a sudden it's done. But like you
Yeah.
said, it can go both ways because they also haven't seen two guys that we just talked about that one's a Cy Young caliber, the other is unstoppable at home. So hopefully pitching can carry us like they have all year, but I don't know. It's scary. It's just really, really scary. Anytime you're facing a team that, like you said, you haven't seen before and they're no name, it's just like set up for a letdown
Yeah,
every single
yeah.
time.
We've seen that play out a lot, I think. So that's I yeah, keep an eye on that tomorrow and Thursday for sure.
Yeah. What was the most interesting thing or tidbit that came out of the workout session today on the Zoom call?
Well, a lot of the question came up a lot, and I asked Hendricks about it too, but just handling the preparation when it's a team you haven't seen, because to me that's kind of unusual. Because normally, even in a division series, championship series, it's another National League team. You've played them at some point earlier in the year, and not really until the World Series are you potentially going up against a team that's like brand new to you. So, um, and a couple of different, Bodie talked about like being careful not to overload yourself with information, because at some point you got to just trust yourself as a hitter and trust your game plan and go out there and do it. Um, Schwarber said something similar, and so did Hendricks, which kind of like, I don't know, surprised me a little bit. And one of the things I have to keep in mind is sometimes players just don't, they purposely just don't tell you things because they don't
Yeah.
want it out there. So there may be a little bit of that going on, because David Ross, when he was asked about that, alluded to, and he kind of said it with almost wink. There's a ton of information out there, and so they may not want to say it publicly, but I suspect there's a lot of video that they're going over, a lot of really detailed information. So I think they're going to know what they're getting into. Well, maybe at the same time, like Bodie said, at the end of the day, we face pitchers we've never seen before throughout the season anyway. We deal with that all the time. Fastball is a fastball, slider is a slider. What's your game plan? What's your approach? And can you follow through on it? So yeah, that was the thing I was most curious about. And I think if you read between the lines, there's they've got plenty of information should they choose to use it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell me a guy whose nickname is the professor is not studying as much as he can for everybody through that lineup. But I get the thought too of you don't want to overload yourself too.
Yeah,
All right. Well, do you want to go through and pick some of these series because there's just a lot of them.
yeah. This
Like
feels like March
there's so
Madness.
many games. Yeah, it really is. So let's just go through, and I'm gonna go from. We'll start with like the number one seed and just go through those matchups, and I'll go AL and NL first, and let's just pick teams, and at the end of it, we'll pick our World Series.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
Yeah,
All right, let's do it. Tampa Bay Jays. Who you got?
Tampa Bay.
I do too. I think they've been one of the more fun teams in this little short little baseball season. The Jays are a fun team too, but it just seems like they're too young still or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's yeah. I think the youth, lack of experience, that's tough. And the Rays have just been steadily good all season long, and
Right.
that usually plays well.
Yeah, no doubt. This is an interesting one. Cleveland, New York, Yankees.
Uh, that's like a coin toss for me. I mean, Cleveland kind of they were on a little bit of a skid to end the season, so you wonder how much that's like. Does that carry over their momentum wise? But I'm gonna say Cleveland's got the better pitching, so I think I'm gonna go with Cleveland there.
I don't hate that. I just feels like Cleveland was in a weird like, do we want to win or do we want to sell off like
Right,
all year, kind of going back and forth. So anytime that happens, I always go with the team that's trying to win. So I'm going to go Yankees. I'm going to go against you
right.
there.
I like it.
This is the matchup that I can't wait to watch. It's Houston, Minnesota.
Man, I think I like Houston in that one. I'm liking these AL Central teams.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Like the Astros, just maybe it's that they can't bang on trash cans anymore, but offensively, they haven't been the same team this year. Um, and they're another example of a team that I think make them play another 100 games. I'm not sure they're in the playoffs at all. So yeah,
Yeah.
in Minnesota, to me, I knew they were going to be good going into the season. They didn't disappoint. They had some rough patches, but they ended up winning the division. So yeah, I like Minnesota that one.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Also, like, fuck the Astros. That last one in the AL is the A's and the White Sox.
See here, I'm going to go against the AL Central. Even though, so the big story there is the A's are throwing two lefties, and the White Sox are undefeated against left-handed starters this year. Um, but I think there's White Sox have never played well in Oakland. I think the White Sox were in a really bad place to finish the season. They lost seven in a row, beat the Cubs Saturday, but then I mean, really Sunday, even though the score was 10-8 at the end of the day, they kind of got their butts kicked on Sunday. Um, you know, and so mentally, you've got to wonder like this, how is this team coming in with much confidence? So I think that's going to work against them. Who knows? Renteria is a postseason manager, what that's going to be like. Um, and Oakland has been there, and also Oakland is they keep losing these wild card games, and so maybe now the magic pill for them is get a wild card series, and that makes a difference. So yeah, I like the
Maybe.
A's there.
I like that. And I think you kind of nailed it towards the end there when you mentioned Ricky Renteria. I think it's just going to come down to who's the better manager.
Yeah,
It just feels like he's not able to, for whatever reason, get his players ready sometimes. Sometimes they are, sometimes they just don't look ready. I don't know what it is,
right.
if it's preparation, if, whatever, but I just feel like he's going to get out coached and out managed. So we'll see, which is a bummer because I would love to see the White Sox go far. It'd be so much fun. Be
Me
great for the
too.
city.
I can't lie, I'm rooting for a Chicago World Series, but I don't know that they're
Yeah,
going to.
I feel like it'd be the perfect time to do it with no fans in attendance. Like that would be the ideal
Yeah,
situation to
yeah,
have the Crosstown Classic be a World Series
yes, because
because nobody
I
can kill each
love
other.
exactly. I love Chicago people, but I've been to enough Cubs Sox games during July and seen what it's like. I cannot imagine a World Series with fans there.
Same.
So this is probably better for all of us.
I agree. I agree. All right, let's go NL quickly here. So we got the number one versus eight seed. That's LA versus the Brewers. Who you got?
LA, that's LA and two. Yeah,
Yep, that's a slam dunk, I think. This is a fun one, which is the Padres and St. Louis.
oh, there's two series that I'm most excited to see, and they're both in the NL, and this is one of them. Um, I see. I'm biased to the Padres because I just like them. I
Right.
like the story. I like the young, talented players. Tatis Jr. But I don't know. Let's go San Diego. I'm going to stick with my gut there. It's a total
I love it.
instinct pick.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like Tatis Jr. a lot, and I think that's just going to be a fun series. Cubs Marlins.
Cubs.
Yeah, I like that too. And then finally, we got the Braves versus the Cincinnati Reds.
I think I'm going the upset here. I think the Reds beat the
Ooh,
Braves. Yes, because
interesting.
I think the Reds their starting pitching is going to be their saving grace here. Um, I think they can handle that Atlanta offense because those bats are legit. I mean, there's a lot of guys that can get you there, but I think Trevor Bauer with his mysterious extra spin um, is is going to get the job done um, for them. And so, yeah, I think I like the Reds as an upset pick there.
Wow. I don't hate it. I'm still going to go with the chalk there. I'm still going to go with the Braves, but I guess that's another one to watch where I'm
Yeah,
going to go against Jared. I like the call though. I like the upset. We didn't go chalk the entire way. So okay, so we got our winners for the first round. Out of that group, what's your World Series pick this year, and who's your winner?
Okay. Um, the American League to me feels like such a crapshoot. Because there's a lot of teams that I feel like could get there. But I think American League, I'm gonna go. I don't know. I think Minnesota.
Yeah,
National
I
League. No, you go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I really really like that pick. I'm trying to think about who I want. We'll go by league first. So you got Minnesota. See, I'm going back and forth between a team that I feel like could get hot, and so I'm going in between Tampa Bay, Minnesota, and the A's. And I
Hmm.
I kind of like your point of maybe the A's just maybe they just need a series. Maybe
Give
they
them a
just need a
chance to
couple of
advance.
series.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm gonna go A's for the World Series because, like you said, it's
I
just
like
such a
it.
crapshoot. You just get hot and ride a pitcher and ride a bat, and you'll get there.
Yeah. Because I was
All
kind
right.
of
So who
thinking.
you got NL?
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, the Dodgers feel. No, I was just gonna say before I said Twins, I was sort of back and forth in my head between Twins and A's. So, um, but with the NL, the Dodgers just feel like the obvious pick. If you don't say Dodgers, it just sort of feels like you're just picking against them for the sake of not picking the obvious team. Um, but I kind of love the idea of let's do a Dodgers A's, even though that's not the team I picked, but a Dodgers A's World Series and kind of reprise what was it, the '88 World Series that Kirk Gibson
Yeah,
home run. Let's redo that. So yeah, I think in the National League, that's the Dodgers just feel like too obvious of a choice to not.
I think unfortunately that's the case. However, I just can't do it because I don't like the
I get it.
Dodgers, and I'm going to go with the Cubs. I feel like this is the perfect time for the Cubs to win the World Series again for one reason, and that is because it's not going to mean as much. Like it's going to mean more. My phone's going off, of course, right in the
That's
middle. I don't even know where it's coming from. Okay,
always the way it
sorry
goes.
about that.
No, it's all good.
Always.
You don't get a phone call all day, but this is the time. You get
Totally.
it.
But yeah, so for one reason that they're going to win is because it's not going to mean as much. And so we're, of course, going to have two World Series in however many, 4 years, and one of them is going to be like a half. And so it's something that like the
Yeah,
Cardinals and Brewers are always going to be able to hold over the heads. And I know it's going to happen.
yeah. No, I think in terms of the pure storyline of it, I can see that. And at least like it's better that it plays out this way than, what if they had not won in 16 and then they won this year? Then
Oh,
all you'd ever hear about is they finally quote broke the curse, except it was in a season that didn't really fully count. So I could see that being
there's
the way it plays out, like just
yeah,
because.
there's just so many times where that's come up where it's like, can you imagine if they hadn't won in 2016? And then
Oh
fill
yeah,
in the blanks for whatever you're talking about. It's like if they hadn't won, like Jason Hayward would be broken, John Lester would be broken, Joe Madden would have been gone already. Like there's just so
yeah.
many other things. Oh, I don't want to live in that alternate universe. I'm glad that,
It,
that they did it when they did, but I don't know. I'm still excited. Like I feel like there's less buzz this year just because there's no fans in attendance and everything. But I still think it's going to be a fun little mini playoffs. And like you said, it feels like March Madness where there's going to be like 8 games in one day. Plus you have the NBA Finals starting tomorrow too, so it's going to be a busy day. But I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we can get some
yeah,
good baseball out of it. But thanks for coming on here, Jared. I know it was kind of last minute, but appreciate the insight in terms of what the guys are talking about in those Zoom calls. But do you have any works that are coming out in the next couple of days or
yeah.
weeks?
I published something on Chicago Magazine yesterday, so Monday, about the Cubs and White Sox getting to the postseason at the same time because this kind of surprised me. That's only happened now, as of this year, 3 times. in
Oh, wow.
120 years that both the Cubs and White Sox have existed. They both did it in 1906. And that was the White Sox beat the Cubs in the World Series that year. And then again in 2008, which we all remember, and then this year. That's it. So just wrote a little bit about that, and then what if they do meet in the World Series, what that looks like, that sort of thing. So I have that, and then I'll be doing some just postseason coverage on Forbes. So keep an eye there.
Awesome. Well, make sure to check out Jared's work. You can follow him on Twitter at JWYLLYS. So Chicago Mavs, Forbes, just type in Jared Wyllys into Google and a bunch of awesome works will come up. So thanks again for coming on, Jared. Keep the family safe and keep teaching our youths. We really appreciate that. Make sure to follow at Cubs Den. I'm Myles Phillips. You can follow me at mphillips11 and go Cubs. Let's see if we can get this first round victory.